When my family tried to push me aside, I showed them who's really in control now. My dad's hand landed on my shoulder like a clamp, warm and heavy, and he leaned in close enough that I could smell the beer on his breath. "Smile," he muttered through his teeth, still facing the backyard full of relatives like he was posing for a photo. "Don't make this weird." The fairy lights above the pergola were flickering because someone had overloaded the power board, and the whole place had that loud family lunch hum. Kids shrieking, aunties arguing about the salad, the sizzle of meat on the barbecue, plastic chairs scraping on pavers. But my world had narrowed to the folder on the outdoor table in front of me and the pen my brother had placed on top of it, perfectly lined up, like he'd rehearsed the angle. My brother, Ethan, stood on the other side of the table, hands braced on the edge, grinning too wide. My mom hovered near the sliding door with a tea towel in her fists, eyes shiny the way they get when she's already preparing to cry for sympathy. "It's just a formality," Ethan said, tapping the pen twice. "We're announcing it in 5 minutes. Dad wants it signed first." I didn't touch the pen. I stared at the header on the top page, "Resignation of position/transfer of access," and felt this weird coldness creep up my arms like my body was trying to numb itself before the hit. My fingers were sticky from the drink I'd been holding, and I wiped them on my shorts without thinking, buying myself half a second to breathe. Around us, people were laughing, unaware, and that made it worse, like they built a little cheerful stage and shoved me into the center of it without telling me the script. Ethan's wife, Sienna, stepped closer with her phone already in camera mode. "Just do it," she whispered, bright and soft and poisonous. "Don't ruin the vibe." Dad squeezed my shoulder harder, his thumb digging in like a warning. I swallowed, and my mouth tasted like onion and panic. "No," I said, and even I was surprised at how calm it came out. Ethan's grin faltered. Dad's hand went rigid on my shoulder. "I'm not signing anything," I repeated, louder, and this time a couple of heads turned. I slid my chair back and stood up slowly because my knees were shaking and I didn't want them to see that. Then I reached into my tote bag, the one I'd brought with leftovers in mind, according to my mom, and pulled out a thick envelope. I placed it on the table right on top of their folder. "If you're doing this here," I said, looking at my dad first, then Ethan, then we're doing it properly, in front of everyone. It started in the most boring way, which is probably why it took me so long to admit what was happening. Last winter, on a random Tuesday, I was sitting on the floor of my unit with my laptop on a milk crate because my desk had broken and I kept telling myself I'd replace it when things calmed down. I was finalizing a proposal for a local council event, an actual decent contract, the kind that keeps the business alive through slow months, and my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Family lunch Sunday. Big announcement. Be early. Dad needs your help." I remember rolling my eyes and typing back, "What kind of help?" She replied, "Just bring your laptop. You know, your tech stuff. And we're something nice." That should have been my first clue. In my family, where something nice is code for we're about to parade you for something we want. Our family business is a catering company that started as my parents' backyard passion project. Dad did the cooking, Mom did the decorating, and everyone called it cute until it wasn't. It became weddings, then corporate events, then festivals. When I was 19, I used to spend my Saturdays folding linen and sticking labels on tubs while my friends went to the beach. When I was 22, I built their first website because Dad refused to pay someone for computers. When I was 25, I started handling bookings and invoices because Mom kept losing paper diaries and double booking clients, then blaming the clients for changing their minds. I didn't officially join the business so much as get absorbed by it like a sponge. Dad would bark, "Mara, get the laptop," and I'd do it. Mom would sigh, "We don't understand these emails," and I'd answer them. Ethan, 2 years younger than me and blessed with endless confidence, would swoop in for the fun bits, tastings, photos, schmoozing, telling people, yeah, it's a family business, like he'd carry the trays himself instead of showing up for the free canapes. For years, I told myself it was normal. Families help. Families pitch in. Families don't keep score. Except in my family, I was the one always pitching in, and everyone else was always keeping score of what I owed them. Dad loved to say, "We gave you everything." Mom loved to say, You know how sensitive your father is. Ethan loved to say, "Relax, you're good at this stuff," like competence meant consent. When the business started doing really well, enough that we hired casual staff, enough that we weren't just scraping by, Dad's pride got louder and my name got quieter. At events, he'd introduce Ethan as my son, the future of the business. I'd be standing behind him with a clipboard and a headset, and he'd act like I was the heir. Mom would laugh and say, "Mara prefers behind the scenes," which is a funny thing to decide about someone else's life. Then I found out by accident that they were planning to push me out completely. 2 months ago, I got an email from our accountant's office, generic subject line, something like FY, a draft partnership update, and I almost didn't open it because I was halfway through fixing a supplier mistake and my brain was already fried. But when I did, my stomach dropped so hard I had to put my hand on my desk. It was a draft restructure document. Not final, but far enough along that someone had been discussing it. And it had Ethan's name listed as the new managing director, Sienna as operations support, Dad as head chef, Mom as client relations, and me not listed at all. No transition plan. No thank you. No, we should talk tomorrow. Just gone. I called Mom straight away. She didn't answer. I called Dad. No answer. I texted Ethan, because in some delusional part of my brain, I still thought he'd say, "What? That's not real." He replied 10 minutes later, "We're just streamlining. Don't stress. Dad will explain Sunday." That was the moment it clicked. Sunday wasn't a family lunch. It was an announcement, a performance. And they wanted me there early to sign the paperwork quietly before the applause. So I did something I'd never done before with my family. I prepared. I didn't scream. I didn't confront them in the moment. I didn't go into the group chat and blow it up. I just started looking at our business the way an outsider would. Who holds what? Who controls what? Whose name is actually attached to the things that matter? Because here's the thing they never understood about pushing me behind the scenes. Behind the scenes is where the power lives. The website domain, in my name, because Dad didn't want to deal with IT. The business email accounts, set up under my admin access. The booking software, my login is the master login. The customer database, exported regularly to my encrypted drive because Mom once deleted a whole client list trying to tidy up. The FPOS, an online payment gateway, linked to a bank account I'm the signatory on, because Dad's credit history was messy and the bank liked my details better. Supplier relationships? They call me, not Dad, because Dad screams when things go wrong and I don't. The council event contract I've been working on, the one that would basically guarantee us steady work for a year, it was issued to the contract manager, meaning the person who'd submitted the tender and signed the compliance declarations, me. And the biggest one, the one that made my hands shake when I saw in black and white, was the commercial kitchen lease renewal. A year ago, Dad begged me to co-sign as guarantor because it's just paperwork and it won't affect you. I said no 3 times. Mom cried. Ethan said, "Don't be selfish." Dad said, "After everything I've done." I caved because I was tired, because I thought family meant sacrifice, because I didn't realize they were building a cage out of my signature. So yes, I had leverage, more than they realized. And I hated that I did, because I didn't want leverage over my own family. I just wanted respect. But if they were going to treat me like furniture, I was going to remind them furniture doesn't keep the lights on. Which brings us back to today, this backyard, this pen, this folder, Dad's hand on my shoulder like he owned me. When I put my envelope on the table, Dad's eyes flicked to it, suspicious. Ethan's jaw tightened. Sienna's smile froze. Camera still raised like she was about to record my humiliation and wasn't sure why the script changed. "What's that?" Dad asked, voice low. "My turn," I said. Dad's nostrils flared. "This isn't the time." "You chose the time," I replied, and I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears like a drum. "You chose a family gathering. You chose an audience. You don't get to tell me to keep it quiet when you try to corner me quietly." A few people were definitely watching now. My cousin Paige was standing near the drinks table, eyebrows raised. My Aunt Leanne had paused mid-sentence, one hand still holding a bowl of chips. Even the kids had slowed down, sensing adult tension the way dogs do. Dad straightened, forcing a laugh that sounded like a cough. "Everyone relax," he called out a little too loud. "Just sorting some admin." I didn't let him. I opened my envelope and slid out the first page, just one, clean and simple, and held it up so Dad and Ethan could see. It was the council contract award email, printed, with my name highlighted where it said, "Congratulations, Mara, your tender has been approved." Ethan blinked. Dad's smile cracked. "What is this?" Ethan snapped. "This is the contract you've been bragging about for weeks," I said, still calm. "The one Dad has been telling everyone is locked in. The one Mom told Aunt Leanne we finally got because Ethan's so good with people." Mom flinched at her own name being said out loud. "It's awarded to me," I continued, tapping the highlighted line. "And it's attached to compliance documentation I signed personally. Which means if you push me out, you don't get to keep using my name to win tenders, and you don't get to use the contract while pretending I don't exist." Dad's face went red. "Don't be ridiculous," he hissed. "I'm not being ridiculous," I said. "I'm being factual." Ethan leaned forward, voice sharp. "You can't just take that." "I'm not taking anything," I replied. "It's mine. I did the work. I sat up at 1 a.m. answering their risk management questions while you were out drinking with Sienna's cousins. I handled the insurance certificates. I handled the food safety. I handled the accessibility compliance. I did it because I believed we were a team." Sienna scoffed. "It's still a family business." I looked at her. "Then why am I being asked to resign?" I asked, and I could feel the room tighten. People heard the word resign. "You can't unhear it," Dad snapped. "Because we're restructuring." "And you didn't think I deserved a conversation?" I asked, keeping my voice steady, even as my hand started to tremble. "You thought I deserved a pen shoved at me." Ethan grabbed the folder they'd given me like he could hide it. Too late. Paige was staring openly now. Aunt Leanne's mouth had fallen slightly open. Mom finally stepped forward, tea towel twisted in her hands. "Sweetheart," she started, that soft tone that always means please sacrifice yourself so I don't have to feel uncomfortable. "This isn't." "No," I said, not harsh, just firm. "Mom, don't do the sweetheart thing. You were part of this." Her eyes filled instantly. Dad's voice rose. "You're making a scene?" I nodded once. "Yes," I said, "because you tried to erase me quietly." Then I pulled out the second page and slid it toward Ethan. It was a simple list. Domains, logins, payment gateways, supplier accounts, booking software. Next to each one, admin access held by Mara. In big bold at the bottom, business email accounts and domain registered to Mara. Transfer requires authorization. Ethan's face drained of color in a way that almost made me feel sorry for him. "Almost." "What are you doing?" he whispered. "I'm telling you the truth," I said. "You can't push me aside and still expect me to hold the business together from the shadows." Dad slapped the table hard enough that the cutlery jumped. "So you're threatening us," he spat. I breathed out slowly. "I'm setting boundaries," I said, "because you don't listen unless there are consequences." The backyard had gone quiet now in that weird, uncomfortable way where people pretend they're not listening while listening with their whole bodies. Ethan swallowed. "What do you want?" he asked, voice tight. I looked at my dad. I looked at my mom. I looked at Ethan. And I realized, right there, with the fairy lights buzzing and the smell of barbecue stuck in my hair, that what I wanted wasn't revenge. It was recognition. It was being treated like I mattered. "I want what you try to take," I said quietly. "A seat at the table. Respect. A real role. In writing. And I want you to stop using family as a weapon." Dad barked a laugh. "You think you're the boss now." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't posture. I just reached into the envelope again and pulled out the lease document, copy of the guarantee page with my signature, and placed it on the table like a final card. "I'm not the boss," I said. "But you're not in control the way you think you are." Dad's mouth opened, then closed. Mom's eyes darted to the document, and she went pale. Ethan's voice cracked slightly. "You gonna pull the lease?" "I'm not doing anything today," I said. "I'm telling you what reality is. You asked me to co-sign that lease when you needed my credit. You asked me to build the systems because you didn't want to learn them. You asked me to carry the risk, and now you want to cut me out of the reward." I could feel my chest tight, but there was also a strange calm settling in, like my body finally understood we were done pretending. "I'm not signing your resignation," I said, nodding at their folder. And I'm not handing over admin access until we have an agreement. If you want to announce Ethan as the face of the business today, go ahead. But I won't be the invisible engine under it anymore. Dad's eyes flashed with humiliation and fury. So you're blackmailing your own family at a barbecue. Aunt Leanne finally spoke, voice quiet and shocked. Mark, is that true? You were making her resign. Dad whipped his head toward her. Stay out of it. But the spell was broken now. People knew something real was happening. Paige stepped closer, eyes on me, then Dad. Mara's the one who answers my messages when I'm booking, she said slowly. She's the one who saved your business last year when that supplier issue happened. Why would you push her out? Mom made a small sobbing sound. Dad's face twitched like he wanted to tell Paige off, but couldn't without looking worse. Ethan's voice went tight and defensive. She's overreacting. I looked at him. Am I? I asked softly, because you were happy to let Dad tell everyone I'm just helping out. You were happy to let Mom say, I prefer behind the scenes. You were happy to let me do the work while you got the title. Sienna muttered, this is disgusting, like I was the disgusting one. Dad leaned in toward me, voice low, dangerous. You think people will choose you over family tradition? He hissed. I met his eyes. My hand was shaking, but my voice didn't. I think people will choose the person who keeps their events from falling apart, I said. And I think you know that's me. For a second, Dad looked like he might explode. Then he looked around at the watching relatives, the paused conversations, the suddenly very interested faces. And he did what he always does when he's losing control in public. He tried to turn it into a joke. All right, he said loudly, forcing a laugh. Mara's got her diva moment. No one laughed. That silence was louder than any shouting could have been. Ethan's shoulders slumped just slightly. He looked like a man realizing the floor under him wasn't solid. Mom wiped her cheeks with the tea towel, mascara smudging. Sienna's phone lowered, forgotten. I took a breath and felt the adrenaline start to drain, leaving my limbs heavy. Here's what I'm going to do, I said, not because I wanted to perform, but because I needed to end it before my body gave out. I'm going to leave. Not storm out. Just leave. You can have your gathering. You can eat your food. Tomorrow, if you want to talk like adults, we talk. If you don't, then you run the business without me. But you don't get to push me aside and still profit off what I built. Dad spat. If you walk out, don't come back. I nodded once because honestly, that threat had been hanging over me my whole life and it had stopped scaring me. Okay, I said. Mom whispered, please don't. I looked at her and my throat tightened. Then stop letting Dad do this, I said quietly. Stop letting Ethan take credit. Stop asking me to disappear. I packed my envelope back into my bag with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. I didn't slam anything. I didn't yell. I just walked through the house, past the birthday banners and the bowls of food, past relatives pretending not to stare, and out the front door in air that felt cooler and cleaner than a backyard. In my car, I sat with the engine off and let the shaking hit properly. Full body, teeth tight shaking. My phone buzzed, Ethan, then Mom, then Dad. I didn't answer. I stared at my hands on the steering wheel until they stopped trembling. The next day, the consequences started arriving like mail you can't return. The council event coordinator emailed me directly asking for final confirmation of the contract signatory and project lead. I replied from my personal email, politely, professionally, confirming that I would be the lead contact moving forward. The supplier who always calls me rang and said, heard there was drama yesterday. Just checking who I should speak to for next month's invoice. The casual staff group chat pinged with messages. Are we still working this weekend? Who's in charge? I didn't stir them up. I just answered what I needed to. I'll update everyone once it's confirmed. Mom came to my unit the evening after the barbecue. She looked small without the audience, without the tea towel. Your dad hasn't slept, she said, like that was supposed to undo what he'd done. I leaned against my kitchen bench and kept my voice calm. Did he apologize? I asked. Mom's lips pressed together. You know your father. I do, I said. That's why I stopped bending. She started crying, quiet and frustrated. We didn't mean to push you out, she whispered. I held her gaze. You printed a resignation, I said. You put a pin on it. That's meaning too. Mom sank onto my couch like her legs gave up. Ethan says he didn't know Dad was going to do it like that. I let out a slow breath. Ethan knew. I said. Ethan was standing there smiling. Mom wiped her face and stared at the carpet. So what happens now? She asked. And this was the part one hadn't fully admitted to myself until she asked it. I wasn't actually trying to ruin them. I was trying to stop being their buffer. Now, I said, either we sign a real agreement that recognizes my role, title, pay, equity, decision-making, or I'm out. And if I'm out, I'm not taking revenge. I'm just taking my work with me. Mom whispered, your dad will never give you equity. Then your dad will never have me again. I replied, and the certainty in my own voice startled me. It took a week for Dad to call. When he did, he didn't start with sorry. He started with anger, because that's his comfort zone. You think you can hold us hostage, he snapped. I think you tried to erase me, I said. He went quiet for a beat, then said, gruffly, you humiliated me. I almost laughed, but my chest hurt too much. You humiliated yourself, I said. You did it in front of everyone because you thought I'd swallow it like I always do. He didn't apologize properly. Not in a warm, healing way, but he did something he's never done before. He negotiated. He asked what I wanted. Not demanded. Asked. 2 weeks later, we sat at a sterile little office with a mediator. Not court, not drama. Just someone neutral because I didn't trust my family to speak honestly without a witness. We drafted an agreement. It wasn't perfect, but my role was in writing. My pay was in writing. My equity was small, but it existed. My access wasn't helping out. It was acknowledged. Ethan got his face title. Fine. Let him take photos. Let him shake hands. I kept operations, contracts, admin access, and decision veto on anything involving my name or credit. If that sounds cold, it's because I learned the hard way that vague promises are how you get used. Ethan was sullen for a while. Sienna avoided me completely. Dad acted like the whole thing was a misunderstanding he heroically solved. Mom stopped texting me early like I was her assistant. And me? I didn't feel like I won in some triumphant way. I felt tired. But I also felt something I hadn't felt in years. Solid. Like I wasn't floating around my own life, waiting for someone else to decide my value. Sometimes I still hear Dad's voice in my head smile. Don't make this weird. And I think about how many years I spent smiling through being pushed aside because I didn't want to make things weird. The truth is, it was already weird. It was weird that my labor was invisible. It was weird that my success was treated like family property. It was weird that I had to bring an envelope of proof to be treated like a person. So when my family tried to push me aside, I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't collapse into the old guilt spiral. I stood up, put reality on the table, and made them face the part they were counting on me to hide. I was the one holding the whole thing together. And once everyone saw that, they couldn't pretend I was just helping out anymore.